What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. Today we are taking it to our Stasis Warlock using the new Exotic Gauntlets, Ballidorse Wrathweavers. Now these things give us some crazy extra damage to our Winter Wraith shockwave, so this thing doubles our damage actually when you shoot out and do your pulse wave. That thing absolutely melts bosses and melts some of those high-end enemies. So we're gonna play this build fully around creating a bunch of orbs as well as freezing targets to get back our super just a little bit faster. So as always, starting out with our shade binder here, of course we're using our Winter's Wraith so we can use those exotic gauntlets. We're casting out with our melee that nice stasis ball that freezes targets, and then really that shockwave with the shatter damage that kills everything in its path, does that nice damage on bosses. That's really where those exotic arms come into play, doubling the damage like I said earlier, so it is pretty chunky on that DPS. Now for our abilities right here, we're going to have Healing Rift with Burst Glide and our Prenumble Blast. Now for our grenade, I personally went with Cold Snap here because of its instant freeze on targets, as well as it spawns Seekers to track targets and freeze them as well, and you will see why that is so important with our Fragments. Now when we move on to our aspects over here, we have Glacial Harvest, so freezing those targets creates nice stasis shards for us around the frozen target. Those stasis shards give us more melee energy when we pick them up, and we're going to be freezing everything, so we're going to get back our melee very quickly with this build, being able to freeze stuff instantly with that as well. That nice little positive feedback loop. Now for our second aspect right here, we have Ice Flare Bolts. So when we shatter a frozen target, it spawns Seekers that track and freeze nearby targets. So this pairs perfectly with that Cold Snap grenade, because in the gameplay that you'll see, there is so much freezing going on and so many of those stasis shards just from throwing one grenade, using your melee and shattering everything around. Those little trackers are going everywhere, so you get your super back fast, as well as creating a bunch of those stasis shards. Now first up for our fragments, we have Whisper of Conduction, so all of those stasis shards that we're making from freezing those targets track to our position, so it makes it a lot easier for us, not having to get so up close and personal with those bigger enemies, and it's super nice for it to be able to track to us, especially with this next fragment that we have here, because those stasis shards on top of giving us melee also give us an overshield with falls off after 10 seconds, but this right here is so nice for survivability and keeping you alive in that end game content. Plus with the amount of those stasis shards that we create, it feels like you basically always have that overshield up. Now third on our list right here, we have Whisper of Fissure, so the damage and size and burst of that stasis that you destroy, whether it be a stasis crystal or a frozen target, is increased. So it is nice because of all of those frozen targets. We're going to have that nice high impact damage with the burst and tracking even more of those enemies. And last but certainly not least, probably the most important for spamming our super here, especially with 100 intellect, we have Whisper of Bonds. So defeating all of those frozen targets from our grenade and our melee, and all of those trackers that we're getting give us super energy when we defeat them. So we're going to be able to spam our super and do that double damage with it very consistently. Plus with this build, we're also creating a lot of orbs of power, and it is an insane synergy that we got going on. Now for armor mods with this build, nothing too crazy. We're going to be using Overload SMG for those Overload champions in our prolonged engagement, as well as Volatile Flow so we can stun those anti-barrier champions with our grenade launcher and that Void Wave Flow, as well as this nice grenade right here to take down some of those mods like Grenade Kickstarter. So with this build, we can take out all of our champions, one with our SMG and Overload. With the Stasis, we can Shatter for Unstoppable. With Volatile Flow, we can use that for Anti-Barrier, and you'll be able to see those when I go over our weapons here in 1 second. So moving on to our weapons right here, we're going to be using Stasis as well as one that can switch burns, but mostly using it for its void. So first off, we have Prolonged Engagement with Feeding Frenzy and Adiago. So defeating those targets with this weapon fires a little bit slower, but we do get that nice increase to damage. Plus Feeding Frenzy on this will be able to reload even faster, and the Stasis synergy is beautiful with this build. Next off, we got Dead Messenger with Fundamentals, being able to change the damage type, but like I said, mainly we'll be using it on its void, purely because of the mods that we have on this weapon. Now, also with this build, we're going to have Chain A Command. So with Adrenaline Junkie and Demo, when we use our grenade, we're going to be able to refill this weapon. Plus, when we get defeats with this weapon, it also gives us grenade energy, allowing us to freeze even more people. And that Adrenaline Junkie, once it gets procced, this weapon does do some pretty gnarly damage on enemies with that ×5. So it is just a nice little cherry on top for that synergy of having our grenades plus with Stasis. Now for our armor pieces and mods over here, we're obviously rocking the 100 recovery and 100 intellect so we can get back our super just a little bit faster. Now for our mods over here, we got Stasis Siphon as well as Void Siphon, so we can create orbs of power with all of our weapons and make it very, very consistent with this build. Now on top of that, we do have Double Harmonic Siphon, so when we do get defeats with those Stasis weapons, they will be a little bit more potent with those orbs of power, giving us back our super even faster. Now moving on to the exotic that makes this build so very juicy is the Ballidorse Wrathweavers. Say that 10 times fast. With its armor perk right here, Hearts of Ice, your Winter Wraith shockwave deals increased shatter damage. Allies in the range of your shockwave gain an overshield and increase damage with stasis weapons. So like I said, the stasis synergy of these arms is absolutely nutty. One, that it doubles that shatter damage, so it went up from 24,000 all the way up to 49,000, so it was a little bit more than double. And then in top of that, my allies get that overshield and increase damage, so you can use those nice rockets that are stasis, you can use your deliverance that's stasis, you can also use so many weapons in our heavy slot that can do this, so very good synergy. Now on top of that, with the mods, we're going to be running double grenade kickstarter. Nothing over this really matters that I've noticed. Having 2 or 3 is basically the cap and the same exact thing. So when we throw our grenade, when we have that armor charge, we're going to get back about 33% of it immediately, and we're also going to have firepower on, so when we do get defeats with that grenade, when it initially freezes and shatters someone, we're going to get an additional orb of power, which we're using for various reasons on this build to get back our armor charge, as well as just juice our super and get it back very quickly. Now on our chest piece right here, we're going to be using Charged Up, so we're going to be able to get that armor charge increased by 1 for each of those, being able to get more of that grenade energy back when we use it for grenade kickstart, as well as stasis reserves for that chain of command, being able to hold more reserves just to be able to absolutely juice and DPS with that weapon. Now when we move right here to our boots, we're going to be using stacks on stacks with that double innervation. So when we pick up orbs of power, we're going to get our grenade back a little bit faster, as well as get 2 armor charges. And like I said, with this build and void and stasis siphon, we're going to get orbs everywhere, plus firepower kicks in decently often as well, and it's just orbs of power everywhere to be able to get armor charge, get back our grenade, freeze even more enemies, get our super back, and then do that gnarly DPS with it. And last but certainly not least, for our armor, we're going to have Reaper, so when we throw down our Rift, our next weapon final defeat also gives us an orb of power, just adding to that list, plus double bomber, so when we do use our Rift, we're also getting grenade energy back, just pairing, like I said, perfectly with that synergy everywhere in this build, creating so many orbs of power via the various assets that I said, grenade, weapons, as well as Defiance Reaper. On top of that, we're freezing so many targets with our melee, Cold Snap, as well as Ice Flare bolts in our aspect, and all of those frozen targets that we're defeating are giving us our super back, plus all those orbs of power. So having our super up consistently with a overshield because of the stasis crystals, and being able to just juice some DPS with these arms and doubling the damage of our stasis shatter with our super. So it is a gnarly little build here. Definitely going to be running this a lot with my Stasis Warlock instead of Osmiomancies. I know that's kind of blasphemy, but I do really like this build right now, especially since it's different, and these arms, like I said, with that double damage are absolutely gnarly for some DPS. So hopefully y'all enjoy this build, and if you're looking for more of these as well as some weapon reviews, hit that subscribe button. Make sure to come back to the channel. I truly appreciate that support from y'all. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.